So this is Joshua Hop from JTH Boxing, and today I'm joined by my good mate Jamie Moore. Jamie, first of all, how are we?
I'm all right, son. How are you?
I'm not doing too bad, obviously. Had a busy few weeks. Well, I'm guessing you've had a very busy few weeks as well. Obviously had a little bit of downtime, but here we are now. First thing I want to talk about, obviously, we're going to talk about, your stable and what's been going on. So we'll go in chronological order. We'll start off with, I would say was probably the biggest one, Chantelle Cameron versus Katie Taylor. Obviously, I spoke to both you and Chantelle before the fight, but I've not had a chance to speak to either of you since the fight. First of all, just talk to me about fight week as a whole being out in Dublin.
Yeah, it was amazing. As you can imagine, the Irish fans were great, excited for a big fight back in Dublin for the first time in a long time. Um, and even though everyone was pro Katie Taylor, it was all really respectful and stuff like that. So it was nice. So it was hostile, but it was a good experience as well. And Chantel, you could see in her demeanour it was a big occasion, but I thought she handled it unbelievably well, especially on the actual night. Obviously, the build up to fight week sort of prepares you for that, and it sort of builds gradually as you get there, and then the weigh in and then into the fight night. And I think she just handled it all brilliantly. Even being stood in the ring 10 minutes waiting for Katie to do an actual ring walk, I think was the actual reason why she performed so well, because she was mentally prepared to do that, and it was like war off a duck's back. It really didn't affect her that much in the at all. So yeah, it was a. Listen, he's probably gonna go down as one of the best ever wins. Well, definitely will go down as one of the best ever wins for us, because it was a fight of such magnitude. Two undisputed champions fighting each other, and Chantal went and beat the legend that's Katie Taylor.
And obviously, you mentioned Chantel, like, keeping her cool the whole week and just being very calm. She looked very calm the whole week. Even her ring walk on fine, like she didn't look phased at all. Is that something you kind of had to drill into? Or is that just something she's always had inside of her?
Yeah, no, it's something we worked on. It was as important, I think, training for that aspect of the night and the fight as much as it was the physical side of it. I think when you're boxing at that level, small percentages make a big difference, and the fact that we'd spoke about it and visualized actually doing it and what the crowd was going to be like, and it's going to be hostile, and we don't pay attention to it. Um, we have these little trigger words where I just kept saying, no problem, easy, and she was just sort of repeating it with me, and we'd done it for months before the fight, preparing for it the same way you spar, or you do your drills with your technique and stuff. We'd worked on that mental aspect for so many weeks, and it was just like second nature by the time it came round. So yeah, so if we'd not have prepared like that, then I'm pretty sure that type of atmosphere would have really affected somebody. But she was ready to cope with it.
And talk to me about the performance. Obviously, it seemed like she executed the game plan perfectly. Everything Katie Taylor did, she'd come back with something much better. Was that the game plan that she had? So she always went in there. She kind of knew she wouldn't have been able to outbox her, so she kind of not made it a dirty fight, but there was a lot more aggression. Chantel was on the front foot. Was that something you drilled in the gym?
Yeah, if you someone like Kate is so good at controlling the tempo of a fight, that's why she's so good. So you can't let her do that. You have to dictate the pace. So the pace was one of the main reasons why Chantel dominated, because she did it at a higher, in a higher gear than what Kate was used to. Um, one of the big aspects in a fight like that is whatever their best attributes are, or the opponent's attributes, you have to try and take away from them as much as you can. So, Chantel, a lot of the stuff what Katie's good at, Chantel nullified before she actually went to work, and that's what paid dividends for her. And Katie really bit down and dug in those middle rounds. But I think Chantel had pulled away with such a handy lead, and then finished the fight so strong as well, that it didn't really make a difference.
And I want to talk about the scorecards. Do you think the scorecards showed how close the fight was, or do you think the scorecards might have been a little bit too close?
Yeah, well, for me, it was a bit too close. I scored it 7-3. So, 6-4. Maybe you can argue for, but when I've watched it back, I can't see 6-4 myself. I still see 7-3, but um, I think Chantelle's rounds were clearer than Katie's rounds as well, which again goes back to maybe there should be a sort of tweaking of the scoring system. But I think the draw. As soon as I heard that card come out, I started thinking, "Oh God, here we go." But I'd noticed that the governing bodies had come round our side of the ring with the belts. So even though I did sort of start questioning it when the draw came out, I wasn't too concerned because I thought we've still got this. So yeah, I'm just glad for us and for boxing that there was no more controversy because that's the last thing boxing needs at the moment.
Well, that's actually answered my next question. My next question was going to be what was the reaction when you heard the 95-95 card, but obviously you've already covered that there. Just how happy were you for Chantelle for to get the decision on such an occasion? You know, you spoiled the homecoming party. Obviously, the Irish already had a bit of a rough night with Gary Cully losing. Um,
Yeah,
just how good was it to get your hand raised out in Ireland?
unbelievable. And knowing what Chantelle's been through over the last sort of 5 years, the journey she's been on, knowing how much it meant to her to win undisputed, never expecting to get the Katie Taylor fight, and then it all coming around the way it did, and a questioning whether she could beat Katie in Ireland and the conversations we had. And as the fight got closer and closer and the training camp was sort of coming to an end and she was sparring so well, you could see the confidence coming out, And yeah, when you see stuff like that come to fruition at the end of a sort of journey which started out with someone who was coming to you for help because he was ready for walking away from boxing, it's just the best. It's the best feeling ever. Someone coming to you for help and asking you to try and help them achieve something when they're so desperate, and then being able to help them is so satisfying.
And now one of the big talks have been the rematch. Obviously, Katie Taylor had the rematch clause placed in on her side. I'm presuming that's been activated and a rematch will get made.
Yeah, it looks like it. Looks like Katie's activated the rematch clause. So the discussions are taking place now between Matchroom and Chantelle's manager and stuff. There's obviously stuff what has got to be spoken about, like the venue, what weight it's going to be at, because for the last couple of fights, Chantelle has wanted to fight. Obviously, undisputed against McGaskill was great. She also wanted to fight for McGaskill's titles as well. So if they both made 140, that means you're both under 147, which she was hoping she could become a two-weight world champion at the same time. But at that point in time, it wasn't a possibility. Now she's wondering if we can do the same in the rematch with Katie, but do it at 135, so that the same thing, they're both under 140. So both girls then have the opportunity to become a two-weight undisputed champion on the same night. Because at the moment, and in the first fight, it was just Chantelle's on the belts on the line again. So there was no risk for Katie. Katie lost the fight, but was still undisputed champion at lightweight. So Chantelle wants to try and achieve more stuff like undisputed at lightweight also. So there's a few little questions going on, but the fact of the matter is she's executed the rematch clause, and the fight will take place probably, I'm guessing, November time.
Okay, well, again, that's another question you've ticked off there before I've had to even ask it. The last one I've got about Chantelle is, do you feel she should get a bit more of a say of where the fight lands and a bit more of, like saying what weight division it takes place?
You'd like to think so. I think she's earned the right to have some say in the matter. Again, because she's so quiet in her demeanour and the way she goes about her business, she seems to get overlooked a lot. And the fact of the matter is, Matchroom are promoters the same as they are Katie Taylor's promoters. So I understand they've got to do what's best in terms from a business point of view. But everything was on Katie's terms last time, and this time it has to be at least a level playing field. I understand it's got to make financial sense where the fight is, and it might be that it makes better sense in Dublin. But for me, at least neutral territory would be fairer. Somewhere like London's a little bit towards Chantelle, but it's not a hometown, so that would be classed as neutral, or Abu Dhabi, somewhere like that. But I have no issue in terms of no worries about going back to Dublin if we have to go back to Dublin, because she's done it before. She coped with it really well last time. My only worry is that the second time round, after hearing that first judges' scorecard, would be the judges. I just, because I've got PTSD about judges. But I suppose that's something you can't really afford to worry about because it's out of your hands. You just have to. That can happen anywhere in the world. So let's just see what happens. But the fact of the matter is, the fight's going to happen. If Katie wants to make the fight happen because she can activate the rematch, and I anticipate she is doing, and I've been told she is doing, and I never expected anything else because of the type of competitor she is. She's lost the fight for the first time as a professional, and it's not in her DNA to go, well, I'll avoid that rematch. She'll want to try and right that wrong.
Do you feel, regardless, do you feel based on the way the first fight went, the fight would sell just as well in England now as it does in Ireland?
I think it sells anywhere, yeah. I also think, to be honest, Chantelle, even though she dealt with the occasion really well, she still looked a bit apprehensive to me during the fight until sort of midway point when it becomes second nature. And I think in a rematch she'll perform better. She knows she can beat her now, and she'll go in the fight with more confidence than she did last time, which is a massive attribute to go into a rematch with.
And I'm moving away from Chantelle Cameron. Just 1 week on, you had Akib Fiaz and Jack Catterall both in action in Manchester. We'll start with Aqib. So let's talk about his training camp first of all. So he had to train for this fight during Ramadan. How, not hard, but what did you have to adjust in his camp to make sure he could still train at the best level he could?
Yeah, listen, it's difficult. He does a lot of his training either on his own in his garage because it's so late at night, or Nige at Moss Side, they do a class specifically for Ramadan. So he was training there a lot as well. And yeah, testament. You got to give him everybody who's taking part in Ramadan, just the fact that they're doing it anyway. But when you're doing it and training at the same time, it's so hard. A few times we do sessions with him where we do it just before he breaks fast, so that he's done his session and then he can go home and eat and drink straight afterwards. So it is difficult to sort of accommodate and manage it around it, but we're getting used to it now. He's been pro for 4 years now, 4.5 years, and so we've covered it quite a few times now. So we're getting into a nice little routine with it.
Obviously, I want to talk about his opponent. Obviously, it was fighting Costin Ion. He's a bit of an unknown, but a very tough opponent. Would you say he almost taught Akib a thing or two during the fight?
Of course, Akib's had some decent level of opposition in the short time he's been professional, and Costin was no stranger to that. He really did. Nearly taught him the harshest lesson of all, which is don't punch with a puncher, don't stand and trade with a puncher, and he nearly paid the ultimate price. But that's another big box ticked in the fact that he was really hurt and was able to come through a crisis like that. And it's not early in the fight, so it was later on in the fight when you're a bit more fatigued and stuff. So those are massive attributes and boxes ticked for him, and lessons took on board, which will, in my opinion, in the long run, stand him in better stead, so that when he's in a similar situation in the future, hopefully not as bad as that, but a similar one, then he will have took the lessons on board and be able to take that experience with him and cope with it better in the future.
Do you feel it's almost better to have those types of things happen earlier in someone's career? Yes, it might make the public ask more questions than what they would ask if it happened at a top level, but obviously you mentioned in the long run, do you reckon it's much better to
Yeah,
have it happen early in your career?
definitely. That's why we've matched him the way we have. Because, well, number one, if you match him, if you undermatch him, Aki was a very good amateur, and I recognised early doors he can be a really good pro if he's brought along right. So if you match him too softly, the reality of how good they are is blurred. You know, they think they have an opinion which is higher than where they're actually at. You know, they start going in there and knocking journeymen out who aren't really sort of throwing anything back, and then all of a sudden people start believing the next coming of Golovkin, and then the first time they're in a difficult fight, it's a shock to them. So we've tried to do it with Akib, where he's been in with fighters who are all right. He's better than him, but at least they're coming in and they're trying to give him problems and trying to win. And then that way, at least he's learning lessons along the way. And for me, he's been brilliant all the way through. And you know, he's had some really tough tests, which he's come through the other side with massive lessons on board. So by the time he's ready to step up to English and British title level, which is not that far away, then he'll be more equipped to deal with it than he would have been if it had not been through those types of fights.
And what was the immediate feeling when Akib got dropped? Obviously, I'm sure as a coach, it's very important to stay calm. But what was that immediate feeling inside?
All right, I thought, fucking hell, that was a bad knockdown, and he came back to the corner and he was still really shaken up. In fact, by the time he got up, he still wasn't 100%. I think it was took him about another 30 seconds or so to get his feet back underneath him. But he's shown real character, and it testament to his conditioning, the way he recovered. So yeah, I was really proud of the way he came through it. But hopefully we won't have to go through that stuff again, because the big lesson from that one was, you know, he started to get a little carried away because he was having success, and then all of a sudden, bump, and it just shows you that no matter how much in control of a fight you are, it can change it any split second.
And how happy were you with his overall performance, especially with the way he recovered later on in the fight?
Yeah, I was really happy. I knew Costin would give him difficult rounds, so I had him winning well up until, you know, for the first 5 rounds, even though the rounds were competitive. And then that sort of changed the whole pattern of the fight, and made the fight a bit closer on the scorecards towards the end. But overall, the fight was a very good performance.
And when would you like to next see Akib? I was speaking to him last week. He said it could be anywhere between September and October. Is that, I'm guessing, what you're hearing as
Yeah,
well?
yeah, I think it'll be roughly the same. I agree. Probably September time, end of September, I'd guess, and first 10 rounder.
And moving away from Akib, Jack Catterall obviously got back in the ring that night, his first fight in 15 months. What was just the overall excitement around the gym, knowing that Jack was finally getting back in the ring?
It was a relief for him, really. You know, knowing how frustrating it's been for him over the last 3 years, and knowing now that Matchroom have signed him on and gave him a sort of plan. So he had a bit of structure to it, and not exact dates, but know roughly when he's going to be boxing and how active he's going to be. He's such a relief for him and for us. So I thought he boxed out of his skin. I thought his performance was really good considering the amount of time again he was out of the ring, and that's testament to his commitment as well. He's always in the gym, he's always ticking over, and he never really loses that judgment of distance and timing, because he's always doing it, so he never goes away. So that's the reason why he could perform the way he did after such a long layoff. And now I believe he's just going to get better and better because of that momentum and activity.
Obviously, you could see how much it meant to him, like being fighting again, just based off his ring walk. You know, as soon as that music started playing, he didn't even waste any time. He was straight out, straight to the ring. Just how happy does that make you as his coach? You know, not just as a coach, but someone you're very close with. How happy was that for you?
Yeah, exactly. Just seeing him enjoying it again is a massive bonus. But and obviously seeing him ring walk because of the lack of activity over the last few years, just to being stood in the ring and stood looking at him, watching him walk down that ring thing with his no robe on like a Mike Tyson walk. It was ace to see, and he's such a great kid, and he deserves it all. And I've no doubt he's going to be a world champion. You know, I know Prograis signed with Matchroom now, and there's a big possibility that fight could happen for him. And I've said it for a long time now. I believe he's the best 140-pound fighter in the world, and I honestly believe that he can beat Prograis. And I'm just really hope that Eddie can make that fight happen for him.
Obviously, you've already mentioned his performance a little bit, but obviously he just like when a fighter has a period of inactivity, normally you see a bit of ring rust, but there was no sign of ring rust at all with Jack. Does that just show how committed he is in the gym to staying, like just ticking over and staying sharp?
Yeah, exactly that. He trains with us at least 3 times a week. You know, he's pretty much like he never goes away from it. He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to have a training camp because he never goes away from training. So, and that's definitely the reason why he can perform like he does after big layoffs, because he's not getting back in there. He's always in there. He's always boxing and he spars at least once a week, just to keep that timing and distance in there. And that's the reason why he can do it like he does.
And when would we next see Jack Catterall in the ring? There's been a few rumors floating about that it could be Riga's Prograis next. When will we see him next in the ring?
Yeah, I think he's going to. They're planning on getting him out in October. Whether it's Prograis or whether it's somebody else, I don't know. But hopefully it can be Prograis. I think timing wise, Prograis just boxed as well, so it might suit both. If they can make that fight, I know there was talk about Haney, but Haney looks like he's looking at Shakur Stevens and a few different options. So and it's an easy fight to make because they're in the same stable. So yeah, hopefully that fight can be made.
Obviously, Regis is just fresh off another performance as well. Not his best performance. What did you make of, if you've been able to catch up any of his fight, what did you make of it?
Yes, I saw the fight, and you know, it wasn't a great fight to watch. Sometimes styles clash and it don't sort of blend. And I think the opponent was really sort of negative on the back foot, and instead of sort of trying to go out there and win, he was just trying to nick it. But you know, I thought he did win the fight. Prograis was a little close towards the end, but I did think he won it. And yeah, everyone has those types of fights in their career at some point where just doesn't catch fire. It's not the most exciting fight. And as a fighter, you just like to sort of scratch it off and go, right, okay, I'm glad that was behind me now and we can move on.
And based off that performance, obviously, no matter what performance Regis puts on, just how confident are you that Jack would be able to beat him and become a world champion?
Yeah. So again, like nothing to do with the performance. You know, when watching, I've watched quite a few times Josh Taylor versus Prograis because of Jack boxing Taylor. And I'd mentioned it to Nigel a few times after in the gym the next day. Said, you know, watching this fight, I believe Jack beats them both. And again, that's not because of any disrespect towards the fighters, because I understand the level those guys are at, and they're both unbelievable fighters in their own right. But Jack Catterall is as well, and I've always been very confident in his ability, and I believe that he's the best super lightweight out there. And as soon as he gets the opportunity and chance to prove it, I'm so confident everyone else will see it as well.
And very quickly, just to end off, there's been a lot of talk about the heavyweight division and most recently about the lack of fights getting made. But in the last couple of weeks, so we've seen three big fights get made. So I just want to quickly get your thoughts on them. So the first fight I just want to get your thoughts on is Zhang versus Joyce 2. Obviously, we saw the first fight with Joyce not really moving his head that much and getting stopped due to his eye. What do you make of the rematch, and how do you feel Joyce should approach the rematch?
Well, you know, you've got to think at Joyce's age and the stage of his career, they probably had no choice but to try and chase that rematch. he can definitely make adjustments and try to sort of right those wrongs. But sometimes someone's just got your number, and maybe he's got that style that that is made for Joyce. So southpaws are a nightmare for some people at any weight, but a good, accurate, crafty, well-timed southpaw. For someone like Joyce, whose best attribute is his pressure, where southpaws can sort of make that little step back and drop the left hand in. They're a nightmare sometimes for people, and Joyce didn't perform well the first time, so I do give him that. I think he can box a lot better in the rematch. So I think it's a great fight. I really do think it'll catch fire, and I think he might struggle early on, but I don't think he'll make the same type of mistakes as he did in the first fight. He'll avoid those left hands down the middle, and to some extent, he'll drag him into those middle rounds and then start to make it a really uncomfortable, difficult fight for him and make it closer. And then depending on how that last sort of third of the fight goes, depends on who will win. But it's an intriguing fight, definitely.
And for what you'd say now, would you say Zhang will win again, or do you reckon Joyce will get revenge?
Oh, I really don't know. I really don't
It's
know.
one of those
Honestly,
fights, isn't it? It's one of those fights that you just can't decide.
it really is, because I do believe Joyce could be a lot better in the rematch. I just don't know whether it'll be enough. I'm really on the fence. I've got splinters in my ass.
All right, so we'll move on to the next fight I've got on the list, which is, I think it'll be a bit of an easier one for you to pick a winner. Usyk versus Dubois. A lot of people obviously don't want to see this fight. A lot of people just want to see Usyk versus Fury, but sometimes you just have to fight your mandatories. Dubois is obviously Usyk's number one mandatory in the fight. It's been made. What do you make of that fight?
Yeah, listen, I understand if there was in negotiations to fight Fury, and for whatever reason that's not happened, so he has to fight someone. And if Dubois was his next mandatory, then so be it. I don't think Usyk will have any problems with Dubois. He's so elusive and he's so good at controlling the distance that I just can't see him having any problems with Dubois. Power is only a problem when you can land on it. And barring Usyk sort of switching off and getting caught with something stupid, I just don't see him having any problems with Dubois' style at all. I think I don't think he'll have any problems. I actually think I can see him sort of catching him and hurting Dubois, and maybe getting him out after about 6 or 7 rounds. I think he'll sort of slowly break him down and then start timing him in as he comes in.
So if you had to lock in a prediction to the exact round, what would you lock in, like based on right now?
Yeah, I'd probably say round 7. Round 7 or 8, probably 7. Round 7, yeah.
And then the
You're going to hold
final
me to this, aren't you? That's what you're going to do, aren't you?
Well, say that again.
You're going to hold me to this, aren't you? Afterwards, and you're going to replay it back afterwards and say, you said this.
Listen, even if you're one round out, I might have to hold you to. I wasn't thinking you were the one thinking of that. I didn't think of that, but
As
you
long
give
as
me a
there's
good
no money
idea
on
there.
it. As long as there's no money
Oh
involved.
no, no money on it. I'm not a gambling man. I'm not a gambling man. Um, Last fight I've got on the list is Anthony Joshua versus Dillian Whyte 2, which for me is also up there as one of the more intriguing fights based on just what's on the line for AJ. Obviously, what's your thoughts on this one?
You know what? I love it. I love this fight. I think I know it seems like they've made it at short notice, but obviously behind the scenes, they've been there or thereabouts with this deal. Would have took it on 5 weeks' notice. He's known about this for a bit longer and he's been training for it. So I just think, there's a lot of history there between them both. And AJ's probably the amount of experience AJ's picked up over the last sort of 4 or 5 years is phenomenal. But since the Usyk fights, he just doesn't seem to have gained his confidence back. Maybe that's coming back slowly. And I'd have liked to have seen him have one more fight before going into a fight with Dylan Whyte, because one thing you can guarantee with Dylan is he'll come into this fight confident of winning. confident, and he'll go in there and he'll try and put it on him. AJ's got to start letting his hands go a little bit more. He can't be as hesitant as he has been. And I believe if he can find that old form where he's that sort of goes in there, that ruthless killer sort of instinct mentality, then I think he beats Dylan Whyte. But if he's hesitant and Dylan goes in there and sort of forces it on him and he doesn't let his hands go, then it could go either way. So I'm really looking forward to this fight. And it ain't that far away as well, as it's only about 5 or 6 weeks away.
About just under 6 weeks now. Do you think AJ almost needs a fight like this where we might see that old killer again? Because I don't think he got
Yeah, I
himself
do.
very much for a fight with Franklin. Do you think this fight will really bring the best out of him, knowing what?
Yeah, I do. I think he maybe needs something which gets him sort of emotionally involved rather than it being like a business or just a fight and it straight down the line. He's not really got any emotional attachment to it. There's a little bit of a grudge to this one, and they know each other personally. So I think it could be the fight which reignites it and brings out the best in him. So I'm so looking forward to it, to be honest.
Would you almost say this is the perfect fight for him to have before fighting Wilder? Obviously, there's a lot of talks to him to face like an Ajit Kaibel or a Dempsey McKean, but I don't think those fights would have brought the best out of him. Whereas he'll be up for this one. He'll be wanting to go into this one and make a statement.
Yeah, maybe you could be right. It could very well be the right type of fight at the right time to try and bring him back to that old form, because he's definitely going to need it if and when he comes through this fight and goes into a fight with Wilder, because you can't be hesitant with someone like Wilder. He has to go in there and be the killer, right? Otherwise, there's one punch from Wilder, without you sort of stamping your authority in, and it could be game over. So yeah, I do think it's the right fight at the right time, and who doesn't love an all British showdown with two people in the sort of top 5 or 6 in the world? There's nothing better for me.
And my last question now, obviously, I'm going to have to get you to give your prediction on how this fight is going to end.
Honestly, all depends for me on what type of AJ we see. I think if AJ boxes like he did last time, he could lose. I think Dylan Whyte could out hustle him. But if we see the AJ, what we've seen in the first fight, even when he was that sort of raw, yeah, he has to stop thinking about what he's going to do and just go out there and do it. And I think this could be the fight what makes him go back to those instincts. So again, I really, really don't know how it's going to play out. But if I had to sort of edge my bets, I'd probably say AJ. In an absolute barnstorm. I think it's going to be a great fight.
Jamie, that's all from me. Pleasure to talk to you as always, and hopefully we'll speak again soon. Thank you.
Cheers, pal. No worries, Josh.